Hello viewers, Marianne from Revealing Light Tarot. How are we all today, or this evening, wherever you are in the world when you're watching this? I hope that you're fine, that you're doing well, and thank you very much for watching this. I wanted to take a look at the state of the democracy with the focus on the US, although later we might get into other countries as well, particularly as they relate to the levels of this virus. But first to the US, as you will have now know, that news has emerged that Secretary of State Pompeo had asked Donald Trump to fire the State Department IG Steve Linick. He was reportedly investigating the $8 billion arms deal in 2019 to Saudi Arabia, which of course was done without congressional approval. This is quite serious because if he was fired as a result of this investigation, then again we could have another inquiry, another investigation. In fact, Senator Chuck Grassley, the most senior Republican in the Senate, has written to the White House asking for answers as to why this occurred. So I think that presents a couple of questions. Yesterday when I was reading in another forum, before the news had broken, that the Saudi deal was potentially wrapped up in this firing. Originally it had thought that the IG may have been fired because Pompeo was allegedly asking State Department staff to run errands inappropriately. When I was reading on that, I actually thought there was more to it. Today we have the breaking news about Saudi Arabia and that arms deal. Let's get to the bottom. Let's probe that a little bit. Let's ask if it is directly connected to that Saudi Arabian arms deal. And what was Linick, what was emerging in that inquiry? Pompeo may have known when you have these requests for documentation, it may have been getting a bit too close for comfort. What's Pompeo's fate? And really importantly, a couple of GOP senators have come out and said that they're not happy with this. But really, when push comes to shove, how far will the GOP, which is, this is blatantly trying to obstruct oversight and accountability and transparency, how far will the GOP go to rein in this president? We'll look at that as well. If I've got time in this reading, perhaps it's another reading, I want to look at the independent inquiry in relation to the virus and the pandemic. Will it be independent? What might it yield? And also why, going back to the question of democracy, why did partisan type governments where we've been focusing in the US, Trump, in the UK, Boris Johnson, why did those type of governments that had been whipping up this division, why have they been impacted so badly by the virus? And does that then go to whipping up these conspiracy theories when the time comes for calm logic? It's unable to be found, and of course that's where you get this virus is a hoax. So has that backfired on these governments? Because in the US, of course, Trump is not even pretending to lead now. Let's go back to the beginning, though, the state of the democracy. Let's take a look at the state of democracy. I think as far as our Western democracies go, the US is by far the most visible decline, as it has been hit very hard by the Trump governments, enabled by the Attorney General William Barr, has hit the rule of law so hard. And of course the rule of law and justice is the one of the underpinning, I should say, They're undermining it, underpinning principles of any democracy. So let's take a look at the state of the democracy in the US. I'm using my everyday tarot. Let's take a look at the state of the democracy in the US. Show me the state of democracy, Spirit. How healthy is it, or otherwise? What kind of conditions are affecting it? How strong? Show me how strong is the state of the democracy in the US. How strong is the state of the democracy? And I'm going to the courts. If I can, I will pin a reading I did some time ago, because I'm just seeing all these justices sitting at a bench, where it found that the courts will be the last line of defence in the US democracy. I think that the reading was titled, Will the Republic Hold? I'll go back to that. But let's just take another look. Show me how strong the US democracy actually is. All right. So we've got a quickening of the unraveling of the democracy with this Chariot. It can be, I use this deck because it brings forward everyday images. This is of a young adolescent on a skateboard, potentially careering out of control. It's suggesting that there is not the maturity and the wisdom at the moment being applied to the processes of democracy, and also coupled with the pace, the quickening pace of the challenges to US democracy. And the other aspect of the Chariot is that, yes, it can career out of control. Someone needs to be driving the Chariot. Who is driving the Chariot? The person that is expediting the attack or the challenges to democracy. So we've got the Chariot as the signifier card. Let's take a look what is challenging it. Queen of Wands to me is passion and enthusiasm. When we look at how what went wrong, if you could have an independent inquiry into what went wrong with US democracy, when did that start? How did that happen? This is the Queen of Wands is somebody conducting something. There are fireworks in the background. This is about faith, belief, passion. Inspiration, and out of all of that comes action. The Queen of Wands is in the challenge position. So unless there is action, unless there is, inspiration, then this Chariot will continue to career on down the road. So it's going to take a coming together and a unity and an inspiration to save your democracy is what this is saying. Let's have a look at the foundation of the reading. I'm pleased to see the King of Cups emerge. This is an energy that is contrasting starkly with the King of Pentacles. This is a good omen for change. The King of Cups is a benign leader, somebody that takes care of others, it can be likened to that benign parent figure. The King of Cups is at the foundation. Unless you have that, it seems to me that when the King of Cups comes forward, where others are taken care of, where that inspiration and passion is at the foundation, where faith and belief and values and the original, it's almost like there are two things running in tandem. There is the focus on greed and on avarice and on taking away equality, and then you have at the same time this Queen of Wands, where there is this need to bring stability, to bring balance back into things. You've had, or you are having in your democracy now, a huge challenge to it. I don't need cards to tell you that. But it also appears that the strength has to be this coming together, this raising that emotion, that inspiration, that passion, to bring forward values rather than to bring forward destruction of values. And that's what I feel when I read. When I read on Trump and when I read on the US, I always feel this battle between, perhaps this what might have underpinned the Civil War. I still feel those tensions. All right. In the past, we've got the Six of Swords. That is interesting because the King of Cups is in the foundation of the reading. This King of Swords is in the past. This is a moving away from complete and utter destruction. So it tells me that enough people are moving toward wanting to put things to right, wanting to repair things, wanting to move away from the edge of the cliff. Or the cracking of the ice. Very appropriate images in this deck for the US, I feel. The potential future, or what's in the sky, could be the issue as well, is being forced to look at something in a different way. Now I have the bird. It looks like the dove of peace up at the top of this card. It looks like a busy subway scene or a busy street scene, and this is a young person here, really causing these other older people to have a look at something in a different light. So the Hanged Man talks about things being in suspension, in trance. It's, if you look at it from an energy point of view, it's the eye of the tornado, having to stare down what is wrong, and having to then make decisions as to how you're going to take control, take the reins of that chariot. Let's have a look at what's in the immediate future. The Four of Wands. I'm pleased to see that card. The Four of Wands is community, it's celebration, it's a coming together. So people always ask me, what is occurring on the ground? Will this current Sideshow Don be re-elected in November? I can tell you categorically I'm not seeing that in the cards. In fact, I'm seeing a Democratic win. When I say a Democratic Party win, I'm not even sure that we should even describe it like that. This is a win for the communities on the ground, whether they be Republican or Democratic Party. This is a win for a coming together and a unity. That's in the immediate future position. Now, the Seven of Swords in the here and now. What would cause you to have to look at something in a different way? The Seven of Swords is somebody who takes the family's possessions, jewels, riches, and makes off with it, leaving the family bereft with nothing. So this is what you have with in the White House, what you have with your current GOP. This grab for power is all about plundering, is all about deceit in a way. There's no transparency in the thief, because the thief breaks in at night and steals what is needed. In other tarot cards, it represents stealing the armory and leaving the camp undefended. Let's have a look at what is in the environment around. And this is the Five of Coins. It's interesting. Again, I talked about plundering. This poker machine is yielding, but at the same time, it's leaving potentially others with nothing. So the five of coins, the Five of Pentacles, talks about an inner sanctum, getting what they need, being looked after, but it's also talking about loss for others that are not in the inner sanctum. So this goes to the equality nature of the democracies. Let's take a look at what's in the hopes and fears. We do have the Four of Blades, or the Four of Swords. This is somebody that puts down their weapons and is wounded in battle. So the hope is that this energy, which it is represented by Donald Trump, but it's more than Donald Trump. It's those that backed him in 2016 and the reasons why they backed him. The first thing he did was enact a tax cut for the very, very wealthy. The hope is that this energy, this way of doing things, this way of governing that is so explicit in these cards, that it is on the retreat and that something new is coming forward. This is how governments change. When we get to see something differently and we get to see it full on and there is illumination and we do understand what is going on or what has gone on and we vote. We vote. That is the foundation of all democracies, is the right to vote, and that actually people do vote for change. And that's what made the former President Obama's answer back to Sideshow Don's denigration, continual denigration. He used one word, vote. And that's what puts someone like Barack Obama so far ahead of Sideshow Don. So the Eight of Swords is the outcome. This is talking about restriction. This is talking about worry. This is talking about I've had enough. This is talking about wanting to break out of that prison. Let's take a look at what's clarifying that. The Three of Swords. This isn't an easy process. We have heartbreak. We have loss. But it is only when you have these things that you see things very, very clearly and you are inspired enough to make that change. So the change that's coming through will be strong. The Page of Coins, the economy. Again, the economy, the suffering. We've got the pandemic. All of these things are coming forward in a blend of, I guess, drive, inspiration and drive to change things. The state of your democracy. It's restricted. There's loss. And the Page of Coins tells me there's great inequality. So let's have a look at what's at the base of the pack, which is what is happening in real time. It can deepen our understanding of this question. We have the Devil card, which so often comes up in my readings. This is a one-way street in this card. This is somebody that is squandering. This is somebody that is only interested in materialism. And these are pretty grey streets that we're seeing. The Devil card, where do we put our focus? The Nine of Swords, this is anxiety and worry. You can see this clock is looking like it is 10 to 2, 10 to 2 in the morning, suggesting this person can't sleep. There's high levels of anxiety at the moment. But we do have judgment. Judgment. What breaks the trance? What breaks the trance? Judgment. Something coming to an inevitable ending, where you see what has gone on, and you move toward a different destination. So something is coming to an inevitable close. We've got the Three of Coins, an understanding that a lot has to be fixed. And we also have the Four of Coins. This is insecurity around money, but it's also high levels of insecurity around democracy. The holding back of information, the firing, the lack of transparency, the lack of good governance. All of those things shows that this could be, for example, the White House, and not letting anything in or out. It's an understanding of what is actually going on in terms of accountability and transparency and exclusiveness. And we do have temperance here. Again, another card that comes forward so often is a December timeline. So the message here is, if that's temperance is balance. The message here is, if you want your democracy to be strengthened, you have to get out and vote. That is the bottom line, because the health of the democracy is described in the outcome to these cards. There is restriction, worry, being enclosed, not being able to see beyond that apartment wall, being stuck in some sort of situation that nobody likes, that people are seeing the very clearly the truth of the situation. It talks about loss, heartbreak, and it also talks about people getting less. The Page of Coins is somebody that this person's not making a lot of money. So levels of poverty, again, equality, justice, all of these things are shown here, and that are balancing a choice. The other thing with balance is you have to make choices. So the Hanged Man, to me, is a very good summary of this reading. The state of the democracy in the US is currently in suspension, and these are the signifier cards. Something, just getting out of control, and the challenge to that is action, passion, inspiration, will to make the change and to control the degradation. So this was quite a bit longer than what I thought, so I'm going to move now to the Gilded Tarot, and we'll look at the firing of the IG. It wasn't just about running laundry errands and walking dogs. It was about something much more important, which is what I felt yesterday when I did the reading. It's about the $8 billion sale of arms to Saudi Arabia without congressional approval. So let's take a look. We're looking at the state of democracy. I'll do a second reading on the independent inquiry into coronavirus. We'll look at the partisan nature and how that's impacting on levels and what that inquiry might find. All right, the firing of the State Department Inspector General Steve Linick. He's been in the position since 2013. The Democratic Party, I'm looking at Defence News of the publication. It's talking about Democrats describing it as it may be an illegal act of retaliation. So again, this could be another thing that where a second impeachment may not be out of the realms of possibility. We could see in a second impeachment action, particularly if the courts vote to release Trump's tax returns and there is nefarious activities identified in that. So, was the firing of Steve Linick an illegal act of retaliation? The State Department, IG, did Trump fire him on the request of Pompeo? Will this be found to be illegal? Was this in retribution for the to hinder the investigation, Linick's investigation into the Saudi Arabia arms deal? Oops, something's wanting to come out. We do have the Queen of Cups, and in this deck, the lightning is hitting her right where she can see something, suggesting that this again will be a revelation. That's the signifier card. There were revelations in that report. Challenged by the King of Cups, challenged by this energy. If you go back to my previous reading a minute ago, The King of Cups is the foundation of the reading. What are the GOP going to do at the end of the day? So the revelations will the ability, or Trump's ability to conceal something, will be challenged by enough people. That's what this is saying. There's certainly going to be that challenge to bring forward the truth. The Eight of Wands. Again, if I had $1 for every time this has come up in the last couple of weeks, I thought that there will be a rocky road. It will get rockier in front of the election. This is the amount of things that are coming forward, that are blasting through the skies, that are potentially need investigation, that are potentially or could be against the law. It's just coming through quick. Here's that Chariot, the pace of it. In the past, we've got the Justice card. The Justice card. So this action in the past, I'm going to draw a clarifier on that card. That's very interesting, because that will tell me whether this past action was, let's have a look at it. Was it illegal? Here we have the Lovers. This is the deals between, I think, Pompeo and Trump. It's in the sky. It is Trump, again, the Gemini. I think the moon went into new moon in Gemini, I think on the 22nd of May as well. So it's interesting that the shadow side of Trump is starting to emerge. This covertness is starting to become very, very visible and talked about. Okay, the Six of Swords. Again, this comes forward, moving away from troubled waters. So, was this in retaliation? It looks like that he has done this to move away from whatever was in that investigation report, or whatever the Steve Linick was gathering. Trump is moving away from potentially things that can be missiles, potentially things that can blow up in his face. The here and now is the Emperor card. Of course, he is taking control of a situation where the revelation could cause quite a lot of damage, quite a lot of things coming forward that he may not be able to manage. Now, we've got the King of Wands suggesting this is the lawmakers. It can also be the Senate as well, but this is the courts. So we're talking about potentially an illegal retaliation. So the courts are putting a check. How healthy is the Republic? The courts are currently there to potentially put a check on the Emperor. Will they perform that check? How strong is your judicial system? Now, let's keep going. The Hermit, the hopes and fears, revelations, review. The Ten of Swords. Did he stop Linick in order to hold back that information? He cut him off. He fired him. Downfall, complete and utter downfall. Notice, though, that card is sitting by the Lovers card, but the Lovers, the Emperor, taking control of something that could have caused him loss. And we've got the Temperance card. Now, this is interesting because what this is telling me in this reading, it's telling me a lot of things. It's showing me that he took this action, the Lovers, the Emperor took this action to prevent justice from coming forward, to prevent that revelation. The challenge to the success of all of this is the King of Cups, this benign, this nurturing, firm, transparent energy coming forward. We have a saying in Australia called fair dinkum. Are they fair dinkum? The King of Cups is someone who is fair dinkum. what you see is what you get. So it's this transparent energy coming across, fairness, a fairness coming across. And that is the challenge to what he wants to do. So it's by no means a fait accompli at this point in time. There is something here, whether this be the lawmakers, is this Grassley, or is this the courts coming forward and saying that there must be balance, that this cannot be let stand. Now, at the base of the pack, we have the truth coming forward. We have the Fool card, new starts, and we have the Page of Wands. So we're going to be hearing something further about this action in the immediate future, because we do have the Two of Cups, some kind of unity to come forward with an investigation of this. Now, is this the Democratic Party and the GOP coming together in the Senate to launch some kind of probe? That's what it looks like. All right, so as much and all, going back to that first, we'll look at what was in there. That, because what I'm feeling, I know I didn't want this reading to be to be too long, but what I'm feeling is that what the Inspector General might have been uncovering is why they went behind Congress's back to do this deal with the Saudis. So Congress, from memory, going back in time to 2019, had come out with the vote or a motion rebuking Donald Trump's support of the Saudis in relation to the war in Yemen, where innocent children were dying. They had come out and said that they had rebuked Trump for supporting the Saudis. At the same time, this deal takes place. So the Inspector General was going to come out, I feel, with information about an obstruction, the same old, I guess, MO with Trump, obstruction of Congress, going around Congress, which goes into the bigger issues that we've already seen. He can only do that with the GOP's help. So let's just quickly have a look at what I'll do is I'll leave the CV reading for another day. Let's have a look at what was in that file. When I say file, in the IG's investigation, what was in there that Trump wanted stopped and Pompeo wanted stopped. How is this communications? I feel it did include Pompeo directly communicating processes around how this money, how it was decided, this money, where this money would go, why it was being given. All of that would have been the subject of this inquiry. Show me Steve Lennox's inquiry into that Saudi Arabia and arms deal. What would it have shown? Steve Lennox's inquiry, what would it have shown? Okay, so we've got the Two of Wands. This is always coming up now in my reading, a crossroads. You're at a crossroads. I'm linking this back to the initial reading on the state of the democracy. You're at a crossroads, decisions have to be made, but it was a plan that matured in time as the signifier card, some kind of strategy that matured in time. This could also be indicating what is coming up over the next 2 months. The Five of Swords. Okay, so what this is saying is that they went around Congress and that has been some sort of abuse of power. All right, so let's keep going. The Six of Swords, moving on, moving out of troubled waters, healing. I love how the tarot cards always includes a very positive message for you as the foundation of the reading. In the past, we've got the Moon, so there would have been secret communications, the process to go around something, to skirt around Congress, there would have been some kind of abuse of power documented. They wouldn't have used those words, but that's essentially what that was. In the sky, we've got death. And to me, this is also ties in, because I mentioned it, it ties in with that motion around Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen. That's in the sky, but there's also endings as well. His shadow foreign policy. So what was done on the quiet, what was done outside official channels would have emerged here. And Trump's Three of Wands always came up in Ukraine. It comes up with Russia. It comes up with Saudi Arabia. It comes up with Israel. What agreements were there prior to this happening? The Eight of Wands, it would have brought down those headlines. I'm glad the cards are showing me exactly what would have happened. But this is also the headlines and the amount of, I guess, outrage as well that we're currently seeing. The environment around that is the King of Pentacles. Okay, so there's a monetary issue here tying in with the Three of Wands. But we do have endings here up in the sky. The Page of Pentacles. Now, this always indicates some kind of financial interest here between the Saudis. This goes back to discussions, deals that might have been made a long time ago. Let's say 2 years ago. All right, so full illumination of all these matters would have been the result. Pompeo, I feel, also could have been asked to stand down. And we have the Queen of Pentacles, my card for your national security. This was a breach of national security. It would have, as we know, and this has also come up in the past for the US, regardless of other leaders, it actually caused harm to a very vulnerable population. Let's see, the Queen of Swords, the Democrats are going to take this up. The Knight of Cups, what was offered is the crux of this. What was offered? I think at a broader scale, I feel that your Congress, I feel that the Democratic Party and the GOP will come together in some form to look at this, to look at the investigation and the world, endings and beginnings. This is the hope that we all have, that the truth will come forward about the devil, the greed, the materialism, and the revelations. But interestingly enough, in this deck, the next card is the Chariot. So we go back to my initial reading. Why is the democracy being degraded? It is this rampant greed and avarice, and there is the Queen of Cups coming forward again. She, of course, sits on the same sits at the throne with the King of Cups. So they perform two different functions. Fairness, revelation. She comes forward with a firmness, revelation, and fairness, a move toward fairness. So I feel that this could have marked the end of Pompeo. Pompeo would have had to resign because there's been an abuse of power. So Trump was protecting Pompeo, who was protecting Trump's interest. So Pompeo was doing Trump's bidding, and now Trump is protecting Pompeo as well. So it's a crooked old show that is being run in that White House, I feel. All right, so let's have a look at, will the GOP come together? Just quickly before we go, will the GOP come together with the Democratic Party to launch this investigation? Will the GOP come together with the Democratic Party to launch this investigation? Things are moving very quickly. The energy is one of change. I'm seeing a spiral energy. A spiral, the nature of energy that is swirling is that it could lead to some sort of change. Let's see, will the GOP and the Democratic Party come together to launch a probe into this. I think it's got to be bipartisan, and I've got the Fool card, which is a new start, which is a yes card. So I feel that they will. The Eight of Swords, or as always, this showed up in your democracy reading, a restriction there, which is the challenge, but breaking out of that restriction. The Eight of Pentacles, work that needs to be done, and a level of skill that needs to come forward. If the Democratic Party alone launched that probe, it won't be as powerful as if they come together to do it together. But it's just going to be hard work. So, what's at the base of the pack? We do have this Three of Swords coming up again. The loss and the betrayal and the heartache is at the genesis for change, and we do have this coming together, the Four of Wands. Now we've got the Lovers card. That can be unity, but it can also be Donald Trump. And of course we've got the King of Wands. Now what I'm being reminded of is that the Senate did do the right thing in relation to that Russia investigation. So again, the cards are saying, yes, it's going to be hard work, but there's hope. But there's always hope. All right, so I'm seeing here there could be a joint action. It will be restrictive. They have to break out of that restriction. Of course, loyalty to Trump. And it's going to be hard work to get that probe off the ground. I do feel that they will come together, though, because if I go a bit further, I do see the King of Cups and the Page of Swords. So I'm hopeful with this Page of Cups that there will be some news coming through shortly. I think the more you can see these examples, now we know that I'm not saying that Burr's not guilty. I'm not making a comment. He's being investigated, but that it's looking like that counterintelligence report that McCabe started way back when was volume 5 of the Trump-Russia 2016 investigation. Mueller's was one strand, the counterintelligence report was the other. It looks like that's what Burr and that committee, the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, were working on. The last act of defiance that Burr took before he stepped down was to signal that report had been finished. There is a Senate Intelligence Committee redacted version, signal that it is at the White House and ready for release. So there's hope. Let's see what Chuck Grassley brings forward. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of any of those GOP in the Senate. But at some point, they have to face the degradation of the democracy. They have to face the degradation of the Senate itself. And they have to decide, with Trump currently steering the Titanic in the polls, and the election looking like it will go to the Democratic Party in November, with all of the judicial cases currently before the courts and the big one before the Supreme Court. They have very heavy decisions to make. Let's see what decisions they will make. Thank you for tuning in to a rather long reading, but this is important stuff. If we can change, whichever way Americans vote in November, if this attack on the rule of law and if democracy is strengthened, lessons are learned, and new safeguards put into place, that will filter across the Western world, because the US leads by example as a superpower. So it's in the interests of I guess global democracy for the US to bring forward that inspiration, that passion for change, to create balance in their democracy. All right, I'll leave that there. Thank you for tuning in. A rather long and heavy reading, but if you've stayed with me this long, Well done. And I'll be back with another reading, perhaps looking at that independent inquiry into CV. We'll look at that next, perhaps. Thank you for tuning in.